The city of Vilnius, now the capital of Lithuania, and its surrounding region have at various times come under Polish-Lithuanian, Russian, Polish, German, and Soviet rule. The population has been categorized by linguistic and sometimes also religious indicators. At the end of the 19th century, the main languages spoken were Polish, Lithuanian, Belarusian, and Russian. Both Catholic and Orthodox Christianity were represented, while a large proportion of those within the city were Jews. The Lithuanian element was seen as declining, while the Slavic element was increasing. Census data are available from 1897 onward, although the territorial boundaries and ethnic categorization have not always been consistent. The Jewish population decreased greatly in the Holocaust of 1941–44, and subsequently many Poles were removed from the city, but less so from the surrounding countryside. Consequently, recent census figures show predominance of Lithuanians in the city of Vilnius, but of Poles in the Vilnius district outside the city. Ethnic and national background. Since the first contact in the 9th century, the Slavic-speaking areas have always bordered the vicinity of eastern Lithuania, after the partitions of Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth. Following the decline of the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth in late 18th century, the state had been divided among its neighbors in what is known as the partitions of Poland. Most of the lands that formerly constituted the Grand Duchy of Lithuania were annexed by the Russian Empire, while initially the lands around the city of Vilna had a certain local autonomy, with local nobility holding the same offices as prior to the partitions. After several secessionist revolts against the Russian Empire, the imperial government started to pursue a policy of both political and cultural assimilation of the newly acquired lands. Following the failed November uprising, all traces of former Polish-Lithuanian statehood started to be replaced with the Russian counterparts for the currency and units of measurement to offices of local administration. The failed January uprising of 1864 further aggravated the situation, as the Russian authorities decided to pursue the policies of forcibly imposed Russification. The discrimination of local inhabitants included restrictions and bans on usage of Lithuanian, Polish, Belarusian and Ukrainian languages. This, however, did not stop the Polonization effort undertaken by the Polish patriotic leadership of the Vilna educational district even within the Russian Empire. Despite that, the pre-19th century cultural and ethnic pattern of the area was largely preserved. In the process of the pre-19th century voluntary Polonization, much of the local nobility, boyars and gentry of Ruthenian and Lithuanian nobility origins adopted Polish language and culture. This was also true to the representatives of the then nascent class of bourgeoisie and the Catholic and Uniate clergy. At the same time, the lower strata of the society formed a multi-ethnic and multicultural mixture of Lithuanians, Poles, Jews, Tatars and Ruthenians, as well as a small yet notable population of immigrants from all parts of Europe, from Italy to Scotland and from the Low Countries to Germany. During the rule of the Russian Tsars, the lingua franca remained Polish as it had been in Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth. By the middle of 17th century, most of the Lithuanian nobility had started to also speak Polish. With passing time and changing circumstances, Lithuanian, Ruthenian and Polish nobility merged politically and started to consider themselves to be citizens of one common state. The leader of independent Poland during the interwar period, Józef Piłsudski, was an example of this phenomenon. Censuses. Following is a list of censuses that have been taken in the city of Vilnius and its region since 1897. The list is incomplete. Data are at times fragmentary. Russian census of 1897. In 1897, the first Russian Empire census was held. The territory covered by the tables included large parts of today's Belarus, that is, the Voblasts of Rodno, Vitebsk and Minsk. Its results are currently criticized with respect to the issue of ethnic composition, because the ethnicity was defined by language spoken. In many cases, the reported language of choice was defined by general background, rather than ethnicity. Some results are also thought skewed due to the facts that pidgin speakers were assigned to nationalities arbitrarily and the Russian military garrisons were counted in as permanent inhabitants of the area. Some historians point out the fact that the Russification policies and persecution of ethnic minorities in Russia were added to the notion to subscribe Belarusians, Lithuanians, Ukrainians and Poles to the category of Russians. 1916 German census. As a result of World War I, almost all of the territory encompassing the present borders of modern Lithuania and Poland was occupied by the German army. On the 9th of March 1916, the German military authorities organized a census to determine the ethnic composition of the newly conquered territories. Many Belarusian historians note that the Belarusian minority is not noted among the inhabitants of the city. A similar census was organized for all of the territory of German-occupied Lithuania, and the northern border of the territory was more or less correspondent to that of present-day Lithuania. However, its southern border was expanded greatly and ended near Brest-Litovsk, and included the city of Bialystok. 1921 Polish census. After the Polish-Bolshevik War and the Treaty of Riga, the eastern Polish border was largely established. In 1921, the first Polish census was held on territories under Polish control. However, central Lithuania, seized by the forces of General Lucian Eligovsky after a staged mutiny in 1920, was outside of the Polish borders, and it was not until the 22nd of March, 1922 that the short-lived state was annexed by Poland. As a result, the Polish census of the 20th of September 1921 covered only parts of the future Wilno voivodeship area, that is, the communes of Braslaw, Dunlawickers, Dzishna and Wielczka. The remaining part of the territory of central Lithuania was covered by the additional census organized there in 1923. The tables on the right give the combined numbers for the area of Wilno voivodeship, taken during both the 1921 and 1923 censuses. Polish census of 1931. The 1931 Polish census was the first Polish census to measure the population of whole Wilno and Wilno voivodeship at once. It was organized on the 9th of December 1931 by the Main Statistical Office of Poland. However, in 1931 the question of nationality was replaced by two separate questions of religion worshipped and the language spoken at home. Because of that, it is sometimes argued that the language question was introduced to diminish the number of Jews, some of whom spoke Polish rather than Yiddish or Hebrew. The table on the right shows the census findings on language. Wilno voivodeship did not include Druskininkai area and included just a small part of Varina area where the majority of inhabitants were Lithuanians. The voivodeship, however, included Braslaw, Dzishna, Molodechno, Osmiana, Postaway and Wielczka counties, which now belong to Belarus. In December 1939, shortly after the takeover of the area, the Lithuanian authorities organized a new census in the area. However, the census is often criticized as skewed, intending to prove the historical and moral rights of Lithuania to the disputed area, rather than to determine the factual composition. Lithuanian figures from that period are criticized as significantly inflating the number of Lithuanians. German-Lithuanian census of 1942. After the outbreak of the German-Soviet War in 1941, the area of former central Lithuania was quickly seized by the Wehrmacht. On the 27th of May 1942, a new census was organized by the German authorities and the local Lithuanian collaborators. The details of the methodology used are unknown, and the results of the census are commonly believed to be an outcome of the racial theories and beliefs of those who organized the census rather than the actual ethnic and national composition of the area. Among the most notable features is a complete lack of data on the Jewish inhabitants of the area and a much lowered number of Poles, as compared to all the earlier censuses. However, Vilnius did not include Brasław, Byzyszna, Molodeczno, Postaway and Wielczka counties, but included Zwirin district, current Kaišiadorys and Elektrėnai municipalities. That explains the decline of number of Poles. Soviet data from 1944–1945. The registered population of Vilnius was 107,000. People who moved to the city during the German occupation, military personnel and temporary residents were not counted. According to the data from the beginning of 1945, the total population of Vilnius, Švenčionys and Trakai counties amounted to 325,000 people, half of them Poles. About 90% of the Vilnius's Jewish inhabitants had been killed in the Holocaust. Every Pole in the city was forced to register for resettlement, and about 80% of Vilnius Poles left for Poland. During 1944 to 1946 period, about 50% of the registered Poles in Lithuania were transferred to Poland. Dovile Budryd estimates that about 150,000 people left the country. During 1955 to 1959 period, another 46,600 Poles left Lithuania. However, Lithuanian historians estimate that about 10% of people who left for Poland were ethnic Lithuanians. While the removal of Poles from Vilnius was a matter of primary importance for the Lithuanian communist authorities, the depolonization of the countryside was limited due to fear that it would cause depopulation and labor shortage. This led to the emergence of the ethnic segregation, with Lithuanians and Russians prevailing in the city and Poles in the surrounding areas. These are the results of the migration to Poland and the growth of the city due to industrial development and the Soviet Union policy. Soviet census of January 1989, Poles accounted for 63.6% of the population in Vilnius Rayon County, and 82.4% of the population in Salsininkai Rayon County. Lithuanian census of 2001. Lithuanian census of 2011. Jews of Vilnius. The Jews living in Vilnius had their own complex identity and labels of Polish Jews, Lithuanian Jews or Russian Jews are all applicable only in part. The majority of the Yiddish-speaking population used the Litvish dialect. The situation today. The Vilnius urban region is the only area in East Lithuania that doesn't face decline in population density. Poles are the absolute majority of native rural population in the Vilnius region. The share of the Polish population across the region is decreasing, mainly due to natural decline of rural population and process of suburbanization. Majority of new residents in the outskirts of Vilnius are Lithuanians. Most speakers in the area today speak a language known as po-prostus, and they consider this language to be Polish. Colloquial Polish in Lithuania includes dialectic qualities and is influenced by other languages. Educated Poles speak a language close to Standard Polish. The northern Krasowy dialect of Polish is also spoken.